Today, we are digging into a fascinating scientific discovery, and I mean that literally. It all starts with just a scoop of soil from Iran, but it could lead to brand new weapons against some of the world's most dangerous superbugs and maybe even cancer. This is a wild one, so let's jump right in. And to understand why this is such a big deal, you have to see this number: 10 million. That's the projected number of people who could die every year from drug-resistant diseases by 2050. It is a massive, looming threat, and it's exactly why the search for new medicines is one of the most urgent missions in science today. So yeah, that number, it really sets the stage, doesn't it? We find ourselves in this global race against an invisible enemy, superbugs. And make no mistake, it's a race that defines one of the biggest health crises of our lifetime. Now, at the very heart of this crisis is a problem called antimicrobial resistance. And what is that really? Well, it's basically evolution happening in real time, but not in a good way for us. The bugs, the bacteria, they're getting smarter. They're evolving to survive the very drugs we designed to kill them, turning what used to be a simple infection into a life or death situation. And we're not talking about some far-off, theoretical problem. You've probably heard of these guys. MRSA, that notorious superbug you can get in hospitals, or VRE. The scary part, and what the research we're looking at today really drives home, is that even our last resort antibiotics, our final line of defense, are starting to fail. That's why the hunt for something new is so incredibly critical. Okay, so the problem is huge. Where do we even start to look for a solution? Well, what if the answer isn't in some high-tech, sterile lab? What if it's been right under our feet this whole time? That brings us to this amazing idea: the pharmacy hidden right in the soil. All right, let me introduce you to the microscopic hero of our story, Streptomyces. This is a type of bacteria that lives in soil pretty much everywhere in the world, and it is an absolute chemical genius. For decades, scientists have known this little guy is a powerhouse for producing natural medicines. Just how important is it? Get this. A full 75% of all the commercially essential antibiotics we use have been derived from this one single genus of bacteria. 75%! That is an unbelievable contribution from such a tiny organism. You know, the researchers behind this study put it perfectly. They said, historically, nature is a rich source of therapeutic agents. It's a tradition that goes back to the very beginning of medicine, and this new work just proves it's more vital than ever. Okay, we've set the stage. We've met our hero. Now, let's zoom in on the main event. This specific scientific hunt that uncovered some of nature's newest secrets, all starting with a little bit of dirt from Iran. You know, it's amazing how these huge, world-changing discoveries can start with something so simple. This one began with a single soil sample from a city called Faradun Shar. It's just a fantastic reminder that groundbreaking science can begin with something you could literally hold in your hand. So how in the world do you go from a handful of dirt to a potential new medicine? Well, it's kind of like a microscopic treasure hunt. First, they had to isolate the unique bacteria from the soil. Then they grew them in the lab to get enough to work with. After that, they extracted all the chemical compounds the bacteria produced, purified the most promising bits, and finally figured out their exact molecular structures. And out of all the bacteria in that soil, two really emerged as the stars of the show. The first was strain F9, which they identified as Streptomyces crasufensis. The second was strain F4, or Streptomyces rectioviolaceus. These two microscopic factories were about to produce something amazing. And here it is, the moment we've been waiting for, the payoff. All that digging, all that meticulous work in the lab, it led them to discover 6 distinct bioactive compounds. So let's meet the molecules. So these 6 compounds fall into 2 main families, each with its own superpower, basically. From that first strain, F9, they got a group called the chrysomycins. These are powerful antibacterial agents. And from strain F4, they found the progeniins, which are these fascinating red pigments that are showing incredible promise as anti-cancer agents. Let's look at that first family, the chrysomycins. The team successfully isolated and identified 4 distinct molecules, chrysomycin A, B, and C, plus a slightly modified version of chrysomycin A. Okay, now for that second group, the protogenines. And this is where things get really interesting for a whole other reason. Yeah, they're natural red pigments, but what's so exciting is what they can do. The research shows they have this amazing ability to trigger something called apoptosis, which is basically programmed cell death, specifically in tumor cells. Yeah, I know, those names are a total mouthful. But don't worry about pronouncing them. The two specific protogenes they found are butyl-meta-cycloheptyl protogen and undecyl protogen. What's important here isn't the name, it's what they do, and that is hold enormous promise in the fight against cancer. Okay, so we've got these 6 molecules. Cool names, cool origins from Iranian soil. But so what? What does this discovery actually mean for us, for our health in the future? Let's connect the dots. Well, first off, this was a really big deal because it wasn't just finding something that we already knew was there. No, this was a genuine scientific first. It was the very first time anyone had ever reported that this specific species of bacteria, Escherichia, could produce these valuable Christmasin compounds. And why is that so important? Well, take Chrysomycin A. This thing is a beast. The researchers confirmed it's highly active against bacteria, including that dangerous superbug, MRSA. Not only that, but other studies have shown it can work against the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, which is still one of the world's deadliest diseases. And the promise of the protogenes is just as profound. In lab studies, they show they can tell cancer cells to self-destruct. But here's the absolute key. They appear to do this with low toxicity to healthy cells. And that is the holy grail of cancer therapy, killing the cancer without harming the patient. At the end of the day, what this research really is a fantastic example of something called bioprospecting. It sounds exactly like what it is, prospecting for biological gold. It's the search for new, useful compounds hidden inside nature's vast and largely unexplored library. And that just leaves us with this one kind of mind-blowing thought. This entire discovery, with all its potential to fight superbugs and cancer, it all came from a single humble sample of soil. It just makes you wonder, what other life-saving secrets are still out there, just waiting for us to find them, right under our feet?